Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching this monthly in-depth ag forecast brought to you by AgSouth and Ag Carolina. Well, we made it to the end of the year, so I think it's important just to take a moment to go back and look at what 2025 brought us and then start to do some anticipation into 2026. We got some major things changing, and we do need some change. You've been looking at the latest drought monitor. Of course, this one was released on Christmas Eve. We'll get a new one of these that'll be released on New Year's Eve. And what I want to show you here is our drought situation. Now, what's nice about the drought monitor, if you've never been to the website, it's just droughtmonitor.unl.edu. So the UNL is University of Nebraska at Lincoln. So meteorologists, contributors all over the country send information to these folks, and they create this map, handmade, every single week. Now, if you hover over the map, you can actually look at regions. So I can hover over the southeast and click on it, and it'll be basically able to bring up your own southeast map. And if you look across it, most of the southeast is in some form of drought right now. What I also like about this is you can come over here to the data and click on time series. You can do the same thing, but instead of clicking, you just go from national over to geographic regions and then choose the southeast. And you can see the time series since the year 2000 on drought. So we see some pretty historic and massive episodes of drought, like the one you see here in 2000 to 2001. We have the 2002 to 2003. We have the '06, '07, '08, '09 drought, and then the 11, 12, part of 13 drought that's in there as well. But since then, okay, take a look at this. We haven't had such massive and extensive drought time periods in the southeast. That doesn't mean we haven't had drought. Okay, don't get me wrong. But just by comparison, look at 2007. Holy cow, compared to now. So speaking of now, let's just come down to the end here, and I'm going to kind of highlight the last year. So from January 1st, 2025 to the most recent drought monitor. It's quite interesting. We spent a lot of winter into early spring with some drought, and then it really came down a lot from June into July and August. We still had patches of drought, but June, July, and August were not as extensive in terms of the area. That's what you're seeing over here on the y-axis. But then we watched drought rebuild into fall and now winter, and we can see that currently we've got 93% of the area in some form of drought, with 68% in D1 to D4. We have 12.4% in D2 to D4 drought. Now, I'm just thinking this through and trying to analyze what was going on here with this past year, especially this drought that's built in late, because this will be the biggest determining factor on how we go through the rest of winter. And what I'm going to show you is this, our hurricane season. You remember how the predictions for the hurricane season were to be above average? We were expecting an above average hurricane season with a lot of tropical systems. We actually got that right. I mean, it was an above average hurricane season in terms of intensity of these storms, the size of them, the duration. Just only one of them here ever got into the Carolinas. Okay, and across Florida here, this was way early in the season. Everything else was basically out to open ocean. Some of these monstrous storms like Melissa and Aaron, huge hurricanes, never got a chance to even get into the Gulf. Never got a chance to get close to the East Coast. And you say, why? Well, the answer is actually the same reason why we built drought since, honestly, we started it in August, but it really got going in September, October, November. And one of the reasons for that is actually shown to you on this graphic. High pressure, the Bermuda High, moved all the way here over into this side of the Atlantic Ocean. Instead of sitting over Bermuda, which is what would have pushed these tropical systems into the southeast, no, it was way over here. It just moved. And to be honest with you, this is one of my biggest goals of 2026 is I need to understand high pressure better. I know it's kind of odd to say that, but we tend to focus so much on low pressure systems, everything from tornadoes to hurricanes and then big synoptic scale low pressure systems. But it turns out they all have to bow a knee to the presence of high pressure. And I don't think I've studied it enough, and I certainly don't think the meteorological community pays enough attention to it. Because when that Bermuda High left, it took its circulation over toward this side of the Atlantic, every single one of these tropical systems went with it. And then we get into, the winter time frame. And since December 1, which is kind of the meteorological start to winter, look at parts of Florida, interior parts of Georgia, North Carolina, and South Carolina, very dry. Virginia dry. The Mid-South, the Tennessee River Valley, then getting over to the Arkansas River Valley, the Missouri Valley, the Red River Valley, the lower Mississippi. I just keep naming off rivers here, but extremely dry. And if you look at the soil moisture right now, those same rivers are really just depleted of their soil moisture. Meanwhile, parts of California seen epic flooding as we finish this year. Huge snows have come into parts of the northern Rockies. They've come out into parts of the northern plains. The upper Midwest is blanketed in snow right now. We've seen snows get over the Great Lakes into the Northeast. and all of us just avoided this area and through here. And that's been a very unique setup. And we got to ask a question, when does it end? Because of this setup, driving these drier conditions in through here, we've had the jet stream in the wrong pattern to break things over to bring us moisture, meaningful moisture. And this is the pattern, okay? We saw throughout much of December high pressure settling over some point in the west, a big area of high pressure in the Bering Sea, and deep, deep low pressure centers over, well, at times over the Canadian archipelago, which is here, or the Hudson Bay, which is in through here. So the jet stream has done this. Now, this is why the Northwest saw all of that flooding. Montana's been so wet. There's been big snows in the upper Midwest. We've had clippers come through the Great Lakes, and they've exited. That's been your track of lows. And the problem is sitting underneath this, we've not had a return of moisture coming from this direction because of that high. And the second high, the Bermuda high, is still sitting way over here. I mean, this is it. This is the pattern that we are attempting to see change. Now, it's driven us mostly into a temperature pattern like this. So again, since December 1st to yesterday, the 29th, I mean, everywhere that you see the number 1, it's the new hottest December on record. And we've had outlets of colder air. They've been coming through following that track. So, we're having a really cold morning this morning on December 30th as I'm recording this. It's just another example of a system coming through, bringing its front, dropping these temperatures. Now, it's not like it's been like this every day. In fact, I don't know if you care, but I'm going to show you this anyway. This was the 24th, 25th, and 26th, looking at the average temperature ranks. Now, Christmas was one of the warmest Christmases on record for the United States. And everywhere you see the number 1, again, the new warmest, Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, Boxing Day, in terms of temperatures we have since 1893. And again, the culprit is just this. We have a highly variable Pacific jet. Look at this. This is the jet stream right now, just racing over the Northwest. See it like that? It dives in through here and then exits like this. And this particular pattern is one that we're looking for any sort of a change in to start to deliver better chances for moisture into the southeast and start to mix things up a bit as we finish out this year and start the new one. So that's it. That's the story behind the way that 2025 is going to finish. Now, as I mentioned, it's cold. One of those fronts just came through. I'm actually up here where this number 1 is, just on a family vacation here in the Northwoods of Wisconsin. And that front that came through us, dumping all that snow, it's made it all the way to the coast here and it's really dropping these temperatures down. We've had access to cold air, but we've had brief and at times pretty intense warm-ups that have followed as well. Since I'm showing you that, I do want to show you the season-to-date snowfall. Unlike a year ago where we were starting to see hints of the cold Arctic air gets so far to the south that, remember the snow last January that came right in through here? Well, we're not looking at that this year. All the heavy snows have been up where there was a snow hole last year in the upper Midwest, the Midwest, getting over to the Northeast. Now, parts of North Carolina did see some snow. You can see it's on the map here, right? These are percent of normal snowfall amounts. But Georgia, South Carolina, no. We just haven't had the access to the cold air at the same time as we can get a big low pressure center to come through the southeast to deliver some snow. But I do want to show you something. I told you I was on a quick family vacation, actually up here with my family and my sister's family and my parents. And when this big time snow came through, we had about 12 inches that came through where we were. We decided to let my nephew and my son go for a run in the snow. They were heading to the pool, but my nephew said he wanted to do it without a shirt on. So here he goes. He's having the time of his life. But yeah, we just got here. That's about 12 inches of snow. We already had about 6 on the ground. And they made a run for it, and they went straight inside and jumped in the hot tub. So yeah, the kids, they'll do this kind of thing. But I want to tell you, there is snow in places, and it's been impressive where it has been. Now, with all that being said, are we going to be able to drive some sort of East Coast cyclone, right? We need a nor'easter. Well, let me rephrase that. I need the pattern to get into nor'easter mode. And the big reason for all of this is, I'm just going to keep coming back to it. The drought monitor is telling us everything. We've got to see something start to shift here. Now, right now the sun just rose. We don't have nor'easters going through. In fact, we just brought in all that cooler air, bright sunshine early this morning, as you can see. And if I just take you back to yesterday, you can see all that snow in the western mountains, underneath the clouds here in parts of the Midwest. And are we ever going to be able to use that cold air sitting on top of that snow to do anything? That's the big question we're going to go after here. So here it is. This is where the story lies. Our biggest issue in the near term is, guess what? We're still seeing this. Got it? I mean, that's now. Watch as I play this forward. What do we see? Flow coming around and over. So as I get you out there into the start of the new year, there's still some sort of west coast trough and some sort of northeast trough. Now, if we wanted to build the chance for big lows to come through here, you need to replace this with high pressure. And this trough needs to live right there. And what's there right now? A large ridge. So I started looking. I'm like, well, does the model give me any hint that that could occur? Well, January 4th, 5th, 6th. I'm starting to just look around for something different. And about the 8th and 9th, now we're starting to see something a little different. You're going, okay, well, what is it? Because it seems all washed out to me. It's right here. That is a pretty sizable western U.S. ridge. And I'm curious how the evolution of that ridge breaks down to let some troughs into the midsection of the United States. Now, when are we in time? We're past the 8th. We're way out there, January 9th, 10th, and 11th. But there are some hints beginning to show up. In the near term, though, no. We have one system. I'll show you the timing of it coming through parts of, well, Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, maybe a bit more to North Carolina. But overall, that's our best chance of getting some moisture into this area before we get out to that January 8th time frame. I do want to show what it looks like, though. If we just play the GFS on the left versus the European on the right, we play it through. See how there's not a lot going on. High pressure takes over December 31st. You know, we may get some snow in the Appalachians, but up here in Virginia, West Virginia, not down the line toward the Blue Ridge. So we keep watching the big West Coast snowstorm or winter storm, coming through on New Year's Day. But I'm waiting for something to break through. Now, January 2nd. Do you see it right there? Just coming out of the southeast, moving toward Georgia, North and South Carolina. There we are. On January 2nd, that's Friday into Saturday, there is a very weak low that's going to try to sneak through. And you've probably seen on Facebook that some folks have been trying to blow this up into a big snowstorm. I don't have any evidence of that. Okay? So just watch the models. But that's our chance at rain. And then after that, can I just show you what I'm waiting on? By Monday the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, there it is. On the 7th into the 8th. Do you see that? I'm looking right here. Now, GFS has probably lost it. Look right here. There's something coming out of New Mexico. And as it does so, it's trying to work its way like that. Now, what did I tell you a moment ago? We've had big systems curl their way up here, but other systems that come over the top, we've not had flow out of the southwest. But again, it's past January 8th that I'm starting to get my hopes up about this. So what are we seeing? Well, in terms of total precipitation as I play it out, again, this is starting Friday evening, going through Saturday. That's our first real chance at getting some moisture in place. European models cutting North Carolina off from this moisture. Just watch for any trends to push this farther to the north as we get into next week. That's what this weekend. That's what we're going to watch out for. All right, that's about all I've got. Now watch here at the end of this run. Right there. That is something we've not seen in a while. A system coming across this section of the Missouri, the Arkansas, and the Red River. This is one of those driest spots. So we're going to keep a close eye on it. Until then, the probability up to about the night of the 8th of getting an inch of total moisture. If you're talking about the southeast, it's mainly confined to Alabama. But watch this. Ready? As I start to increase the time here to the 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, at the end of the model run, do you see how activity is beginning to increase in this area? And that's when I think this pattern might give us a hint, something different to bring in some good moisture into parts of the southeast. Now, are the models keyed in on it? Well, the Climate Prediction Center's got us at normal, wetter west, normal here. The ECMWF has got near normal to wetter than normal conditions. The AI model's gone back and forth. And the GFS is trying to bring some moisture in through here. But we're waiting to see if this pattern can finally deliver some southwest flow. My concern is this. The newest outlook that came out on December 18th, they're going to update this, by the way, on the 31st. So go to cpc.ncep.noaa.gov or just Google Climate Prediction Center, and you'll be driven to this page. Well, I'm curious if they're going to start to move this risk of being drier out of the picture. Now, I think they're getting most of their forecast information, at least as they drew this, probably from the European model, from the GFS, which is, we have an extended GFS forecast, which is a US model. See how it's, got this wetter Midwest but drier South? Now you can kind of get some hints of that, right? But European models caught my attention because the new extended forecast for February has actually got this area a bit drier and this area a bit wetter. And I'm curious if we're going to start to see some sort of a subtropical jet come through and relieve some of this. And I hope that happens, because watch as we go in more into February. Look at that. The model is really trying to revive in late January, through mid to late January through February, chances of getting moisture into this area. Now, why I think this is so critical is because if we get this moisture into place, we can finally break away from what's been a very, very dry start to winter. So I started looking. I'm like, well, if I look at the Southeast and I recreate a time series of January total precipitation from 1895 to last year, last January, I noticed a couple of things. We seem to have these about, 30 to 40 year run-ups, and then they drop, and then run up and drop and run up. That's poor man's statistics. I don't know if there's anything to it. But since 1950, technically our January precip has been going up. All right, but that's a long-term slow trend. What I was curious about was what happened in 24, or why 17, or 2010, and 98, 91. What made these so wet? Because if you look, these were the composite wettest Januaries on record. And there's something driving this through here, driving moisture into this area. It starts with cold in the west, cold in the Midwest, cold in the western plains. And what that results in is a jet stream pattern that does this. And this high pressure cell is key. Now, you've all heard this, right? You if you pay any attention to the weather, you'll get weathermen and women up and down the East Coast talking nonstop about the negative NAO. You got to have the negative NAO. What are they talking about? They're just talking about high pressure. That's the thing I told you we need to study. You see, if we can get the jet to dip down and curl like this, why? Because there's a high pressure center here that's going to force it to do that. We return moisture and we send systems full of moisture up the East Coast. But you got to put a big ridge in Alaska, which means Alaska has to go hot. We've got to drop the temperatures in a massive way across the western United States into the Midwest. That's what I showed you here. Got to get this. Now, are we going to do that anytime soon? Well, here's the next 5 days. That's day 5 through 10. Look at that. The answer is no. And day 10 through 15. Wait, are we starting something here in the West? I don't know, but that gets you out to mid-January. Some of the models suggest that beyond that, the answer is yes, that we do. But the biggest issue here is that we're not seeing the right jet stream pattern. Now, I like the warmth going into Alaska because right now it's brutally cold. That's part of the symptom. But we've got to have more to this pattern to really drive a major change up the East Coast. Because here's the big issue. Our jet stream coming off of Asia is screaming. There is some sense of flow like this, but what we need is the fastest bits of the jet to keep rounding the base here and start to come through this area. So if you can get these winds by mid to late January to just scream into this region, we'll be talking about major, major drought-busting systems coming through the Southeast. Unfortunately, most models are saying no. They're out there going, the seasonal drought outlook suggests that drought development's likely. We're going to keep drier conditions in this area. And most of those forecasts are based on one thing, and that is the fact that we still have a La Niña in place. And you can see it right there. There's the cold ocean temperatures. You see, these cold ocean temperatures tend to result in a pattern like this. I'm sure you've seen this before. If you've paid attention to the weather, everybody shows this at the beginning of any winter. It says, here's your typical La Niña winter pattern. What is it? It's a highly variable jet, wet in the northwest, drier across the south, clippers that just come through right in through here. I've explained that many times. And by the way, that's a pattern we're in right now. See it? Highly variable jet comes over the top, dives down. Now, the question is this La Niña going to continue to give us this typical pattern where we are drier in the southeast? And I'm going to tell you something about these recent La Niñas. We've had 5 of them in the last 6 years. 1, 2, 3. Then we had an El Nino, 4, 5. So 5 out of the last 6 years. And you're going, well, have we ever had that in the past? Yes. But do they look the same? No, they don't look anything the same. What I want to know is, where are we going from this La Nina forward? Because some models are suggesting a very, very quick turn in 2026 to go back toward what we call INSO-neutral conditions. And I want to show you that. Now, this is a neat graphic. What it's showing you is the equator. That's the line across the top. So this is South America over here, and this is Indonesia there. Now, what do you have? These are ocean temperatures going down to a depth of 450 meters. When there's a La Nina, there's strong trade winds blowing across the open Pacific Ocean, blowing all the warm water over here, allowing cold water to upwell. But what's been interesting is this. Back in October, this warm water began to inch its way back closer and closer in December now to getting back over here. Now watch it again. See the warm water making its way back across. And what that tells me is this cold water you see up here, which by the way, it looks just like this. There it is on top. Probably has an expiration date. And I think we're about done. Let's go back to it with witnessing the effects of this La Nina. So who else thinks that's the case? I went to agweather.com, clicked on more weather. It's right over here. There it is on that tab. And by the way, oh, this is crazy. I got to see this. Yeah, you are 30 to nearly 40 degrees cooler today than you were yesterday. Amazing to see that. Sorry, that was a distraction. Here we go. This is what I want to get down to. Nearly every forecast is getting rid of this La Nina right now. Even the observations are too, and taking us toward INSO-neutral and then eventually, I think, El Nino conditions. Did you know that right now the European model's got a 50% chance by spring of having El Nino conditions? That is a rapid, rapid change. Now, why am I bringing all of this up? I'm bringing it up because the pattern up until this point has been very La Nina-ish. And we need to see it break down. I need high pressure over Nova Scotia. I need to get storm systems coming out of the southwest. And changing this up across the equatorial Pacific is it's one piece that can get us going there. So what does it look like? Well, there's the December ocean temperature pattern. Watch as I go to January, February, March. Gone. It's just gone. We have to ask, how long are we going to get this La Nina flavor to things before we possibly break over into something entirely new? So if I zoom into the United States using the European model and I look at these seasonal precipitation anomalies, this is what the models have for January, February, March. They're drier southwest, drier in this part of the Cotton Belt, drier southeast. Why? Storm systems come in on a highly variable jet and exit through the Ohio River Valley. What I'm curious about is if I add another month on and take one off, this now goes out to February, March, April, May, and April, May, June. You can see that by the start of spring, we begin to break that down. I think that breakdown may happen earlier, is all I'm saying. Now, you know what we're watching for. We know we're going to get hints of this pattern. It's not perfect right now. I'm not calling for a major flop over to just super active weather in the beginning of January. But I think as we get through January to February, March, we're going to start to see a changeover in this. Now, where the Climate Prediction Center, let's see if I can go find that tab real quick. Where did I put it? Darn it. There it is. Now, the Climate Prediction Center's forecast of us being drier here is mainly because their primary models keep it drier. See that? That's January, February, March. Then you get in through here, February, March, and April. You get out here, this is March, April, May. They start to break it down at that point. But what I think we need to hone in on here is that maybe these models were initialized with a relatively strong La Nina, and they're hanging on to the pattern for too long. What I do want to know is, how does the IRI multi-model probability forecast take our precipitation January, February, March, and beyond? They're drier here in the southwest, Four Corner States, Texas, with just one shade. Look at that, on the below normal side for parts of the southeast. Let's now go from there to February, March, April. See, they've wiped it out sooner. And March, April, May, gone. And then April, May, June, wet. I think it's very important that we understand that our current problems with moisture, because of the way that the La Nina is transitioning out so fast, could give us a sizable shift for the second half of winter. That's the story I'm trying to stick to. And by the way, we can actually see this from the Climate Prediction Center. This is there. Let me shrink this up once. There we go. That's their January, February, March forecast. So again, still drier here. This is February, March, April. still drier. But as we get out there to March, April, May, gone. And then April, May, June, wetter. So we need to be paying attention to this. And we also need to understand what this might mean for our spring severe weather setup. Now, I'll have still 3 or 4 more videos before we even have to worry about that. But I want you to be aware of that transition, okay? Near term, we're having a hard time breaking this down. Still the drier risks. Yeah, I know we got some precip coming Friday, Saturday, but I'm talking about big drought ending kind of stuff. We may have to wait quite a while for things to start to transition over. Okay, that's what I got for you. I want to give you a quick update on South America. If you look at the South American precip maps for the month of December, you're like, oh man, it was really drying through here. But you got to understand something. Even if this region gets half of its normal rainfall, it's enough to grow a crop. And they were just a little bit drier than average. It was wetter in southern Brazil, wetter in northern Argentina. And I'm going to show you the NDVI values right now for Mato Grosso, their biggest producing state. That's, satellite-based plant health indicator. It's now the new record high at the end of December, which means this crop is going to be huge for soybeans. Now we have to wait. We have to wait until we get into January and February before I can make a call on how I think that the safrinha crop could go in and then come out, which is mostly a corn crop. But right now, they're looking pretty darn good, which is why you're going to continue to see higher estimates. And over the next 2 weeks, if there's anywhere that I'm starting to get concerned about, it's Argentina. From Buenos Aires to Cordoba up over to Santa Fe. Yes, this region has been wet as of late, but Cordoba, one of their biggest producing areas for corn, soybeans, and other crops, including wheat, it's been quite dry. But we're expecting above normal rains across key geographies in Brazil going forward, which means the crop's going to have plenty of water to finish in Brazil. So I just want to give you that update as we think this through, and I'll wrap it up here. Wish you all a very happy new year, a good start to 2026, and I look forward to talking to you at the end of January. Until then, take care. Keep an eye on this. Remember, you can always go to the website, agweather.com. I've got all this information running here all the time, and it's because of partnerships like I have with AgSouth and Ag Carolina that I get to maintain this site. So please go take advantage of it, okay? We'll talk to you soon. Thanks.